The reality is that there is simply not time to get a meaningful, well-designed repair in place before we must continue to pass this water down the watershed. In the meantime, a number of the basins above the Oroville Dam have been allowed to fill, trying to forestall movement of water across that failed weir, or actually the soils behind that weir. I've seen this so many times. I've got hundreds of pictures of probably, certainly dozens and dozens of dams that we've repaired that had magnificently large voids beneath a hard element spillway like that. I'm quite sure, personally, that is the situation here, that there are significant voids where water is moving parallel to this spillway, and no water, of course, should be moving except actually down the physical sluiceway of the spillway. That proves that the water outside is charged, and when they actuate the spillway, the water's getting outside of the structure itself and moving down along it. Well, everyone can tell that obviously that would erode away significant amounts of earth pretty quickly, and that is what has happened. That's what caused the failure that occurred in 2013. That's what caused the failure of the primary spillway that we see now, where it's eroded down to the rock and is now eroding the rock back. It's moving a huge amount of water unimpeded. It was moving it from top to bottom until the spillway fell apart, and so there must be a pretty significant void that goes the whole way back to an area before that first vent or drain. And so we don't know exactly, and that is that's the $50,000 question, is this void right up to that structure? Are we that close, or is it manifesting down the hill a ways and climbing from the pressurized area to the non-pressurized area? And we just don't have the information to know that at this point. Certainly, the situation is not a good one. And certainly it would be considered as a failure mode in the dam safety industry. An engineer looks at this. There's been a lot of discussion about, there's absolutely nothing to worry about. This is all on fine bedrock. Well, that was shot when the emergency spillway was actuated, and the fine bedrock eroded back so rapidly that in the matter of a couple of hours, we felt we were 45 minutes from imminent failure. So the rock is not sound, and the rock below either of the emergencies, or the emergency or the primary spillway, are not as sound as they would need to be to move the velocities and the mass of water that we have to move. We've got a very serious situation. Normally we'd say, geez, it's a shame that the primary spillway failed, but we'll just route the water down the emergency spillway. I have very, very little faith in the emergency spillway at this point, and that it won't fail on actuation, and that it won't create a cutback that could incorporate into the pool of Lake Oroville. And that, of course, would be horrific. All those things would be horrific. The eventuality, and I don't want to be, I want to be realistic. I don't want to be alarmist. But the eventuality is that over time, if it is allowed to evolve, the damaged spillway that we see will continue to fail, right, plate by plate back toward the pool. And eventually, of course, that could take the lake out and take the dam out. They chose to stop the water upstream, and of course the result of that is they have basins filled literally to the brim, right, upstream, that they cannot yet vent. So that creates another potential problem, in that you have these dams filled higher than they've been filled normally, and you have the possibility of an element of one of these dams having an issue or a failure, and then that would release that pool in a relatively quick run to down the reach into Oroville Dam, and that would create a failure mode also. Actuated that spillway, all of this rock and debris and trees and brush and went down the Feather River. They created an impoundment of the Feather River, and it raised the level of that river behind the dam and at the power plant. They protected the power plant by putting some walls in place that kept the water from running into the plant, I understand. But the power plant was not usable at that point. And they still are cleaning the debris out of the Feather River from the short time that the emergency spillway was active. That creates a couple of problems. The first, of course, is the fact that the power plant, parts of it are underwater, and we can no longer discharge the water through the penstocks, which we desperately need to do at this point. But also, when we begin to impound a significant amount of water behind that embankment, with a massive flow coming down the spillway or spillways and then turning out down the Feather River, that pool of water that sits beneath the embankment of the dam has an induced motion from that water coming down the spillway at high velocity and turning. And that induced motion is a spinning motion.
Mm-hmm.
It begins to rotate. It begins to rotate rapidly. And that potentially will erode away the embankment.
Oh boy.
Pretty rapidly. So early on, when I saw these things beginning to happen, that was my third scenario of failure that I projected, was this thing, which I've seen many, many times on small earth and embankment dams, where things just back up because of the flood or because of this impediment, because of debris that was washed downstream. And now you have an embankment which is meant to be in the dry, including drains that vent out of that embankment to remove the waters that normally move through an embankment dam, the phreatic waters that move through the embankment dam. And now these drains are underwater and they're no longer active, and the soils are fully hydrated, and then any motion at all will cause a sloughing or a failure of the slope. So that is something that concerns us greatly, besides the inability to remove water through the power plant at this point. It's a horrible thing to have to contemplate, but it's nonetheless a responsible thing to contemplate. Something as simple as a failure of one of the secondary dams upstream, something as simple as a warm rain
right
at this point, could cause horrific issues and problems. I'm worried, having seen the communications, having seen the people involved, that they are able to honorably call an evacuation again in a timely way. You know, the people who live in the shadow of a dam like this, there's kind of a contract that exists. They deserve people who do not make mistakes. We all make mistakes. They don't deserve perfect people, but they deserve honor. They deserve to be told the truth and to be able to make their own decisions based on honorable statements by honorable men. I don't wish to beat anyone up because it does no good, but I do not for an instant believe that the right people are managing this dam, and I do not for an instant believe that the right people are communicating honorably with the people of that lovely valley. Yeah, it's not over, and that's one of the dangers of this kind of a precarious situation, is that people become complacent and they start to think, well, that was something that happened weeks ago, and now everything's fine. It's not fine, and it won't be fine for a long time. It's something that people need to be cognizant of and aware of. It's something that the responsible parties need to be disseminating correct, accurate, timely information on. I do also feel pretty good about the sheriff. He seems like a straight-up guy. I wonder if we'd have had that evacuation were it not for the sheriff. And I can tell you that when the evacuation took place, it displaced a lot of people and caused a lot of people grief and expense and difficulty, but it was absolutely the correct thing to do. If that emergency spillway actuates again, I hope that there is an evacuation, because I believe there should be.